I never thought a snowstorm could change my life. But there I was, trudging through knee-deep snow in downtown Reno, cursing my luck and my job. The wind howled, whipping ice crystals against my face as I pushed forward. My name's Ella, and I'm a risk management expert. Ironic, right? Here I was, taking the biggest risk of my career. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another angry email from our biggest client. If I didn't smooth things over tonight, I'd be out of a job faster than you could say unemployment. The neon lights of O'Malley's bar flickered through the blizzard, a beacon of hope in this godforsaken weather. I stumbled through the door, shaking snow from my coat. The bar was empty, save for a lone figure behind the counter. As I approached, she looked up, and I swear my heart skipped a beat. She had the kind of green eyes that could make you spill all your secrets. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice low and smooth. I nodded, collapsing onto a bar stool. "You have no idea." She slid a glass of whiskey across the bar. "On the house. You look like you need it." I took a sip, relishing the burn. "Thanks, I'm Ella, by the way." "Mia," she replied, a small smile playing on her lips. "So, what brings you out on a night like this?" I sighed, running a hand through my snow-damp hair. "Work crisis. I was supposed to meet a client here, but—" I gestured to the empty bar. Mia leaned on the counter, her face close enough that I could see flecks of gold in her eyes. "Well, their loss is my gain. It's not often I get interesting company on nights like these." There was something in her tone, a hint of flirtation that made my cheeks flush. I told myself it was just the whiskey, but deep down, I knew better. As we talked, the howling wind outside faded away, and for the first time in months, I felt myself relax. Little did I know, this snowstorm was just the beginning of a whirlwind that would turn my carefully managed life upside down. The next morning, I woke up with Mia's smile still lingering in my mind. The storm had passed, leaving Reno blanketed in pristine white snow. I groaned, remembering the disaster that was last night's missed meeting. My phone was already buzzing with angry messages from my boss. As I trudged into the office, my colleague, Tom, cornered me by the coffee machine. "Heard about the client fiasco," he whispered, eyes darting around. "Boss is on the warpath," I sighed, pouring an extra shot of espresso into my cup. "Thanks for the heads up." No sooner had I settled at my desk than my boss, Mr. Harrison, appeared like a storm cloud. My office. Now. The next hour was a blur of raised voices and thinly veiled threats. By the time I stumbled out of Harrison's office, my job was hanging by a thread. "One more chance, Walker," he'd growled. "Fix this mess, or clear out your desk." I slumped at my computer, mind racing. How the hell was I going to salvage this? As I stared blankly at my screen, an email popped up. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the sender. Mia. "Rough day? Same place, same time?" My smile tugged at my lips despite everything. I shouldn't go. I had a career-ending crisis to fix. But as I typed my response, I knew I was already lost. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The rest of the day crawled by. When 5 o'clock finally rolled around, I practically ran out the door. The familiar neon of O'Malley's beckoned me like a lighthouse in a storm. As I pushed through the door, my eyes immediately found Mia behind the bar. She looked up, and that smile. God, that smile could melt all the snow in Reno. "Well, well," she drawled as I approached. "Look what the storm blew in." I slid onto a stool, feeling the day's tension start to ebb away. "Trust me, the storm out there's got nothing on the one at my office." Mia's eyes softened with concern. "That bad, huh?" I nodded, accepting the drink she offered. As I sipped, I found myself spilling everything. The missed meeting, my furious boss, the looming threat of unemployment. Mia listened, really listened, in a way no one had in a long time. "Sounds like you could use a distraction," she said when I finished, a mischievous glint in her eye. Before I could ask what she meant, she was grabbing her coat. "Come on." She grinned, taking my hand. I know just the thing." As she led me out into the snowy night, her hand warm in mine, I realized I was stepping into uncharted territory. But for once in my risk-averse life, I didn't care. With Mia, I was ready to throw caution to the wind. Mia's idea of a distraction turned out to be an underground jazz club tucked away in a basement off Virginia Street. The smoky air and sultry saxophone notes wrapped around us as we descended the narrow staircase, her hand still firmly in mine. "How'd you find this place?" I shouted over the music, marveling at the packed room full of swaying bodies and tapping feet. Mia's eyes twinkled mischievously. "A girl's gotta have some secrets, Ella." We squeezed through the crowd to a tiny table in the corner. As we sat, knees touching in the cramped space, I felt a thrill run through me. This was so far from my usual Friday night routine of takeout and spreadsheets, it might as well have been another planet. "So," Mia leaned in close, her breath warm on my ear. "Tell me something about yourself that isn't work-related." I hesitated, racking my brain. When was the last time I'd done anything that wasn't about work? I play guitar," I finally admitted. "Or used to, anyway." Mia's eyebrows shot up. "No way, I never would have pegged you for a musician." "Says the bartender who knows secret jazz clubs," I shot back, grinning. She laughed, the sound making my heart skip. "Touché. Maybe we should start a band." As the night wore on, we talked about everything and nothing. Mia told me about growing up in a small town, her dreams of traveling the world. I found myself opening up about my own childhood, the pressure to always be perfect, to never take risks. "Sounds lonely," Mia said softly, her hand finding mine on the table. I nodded, surprised by the lump in my throat. It was. Still is sometimes. Her thumb traced circles on my palm, sending shivers up my arm. "You're not alone anymore, Ella." The look in her eyes made my breath catch. We were so close I could see the flecks of gold in her green irises. My gaze dropped to her lips, and for a moment, I thought. But then the band struck up a new song, jolting us back to reality. Mia pulled away, a faint blush on her cheeks. "Dance with me?" she asked, standing and holding out her hand. I hesitated. "I don't really dance." She grinned, pulling me up anyway. "First time for everything, risk manager." As Mia led me onto the crowded dance floor, her body moving sinuously to the rhythm, I felt myself letting go. Of my worries, my inhibitions, my carefully constructed walls. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about consequences or calculating odds. I was just living in the moment, with a beautiful woman in my arms and jazz in my ears. And as Mia pulled me closer, her body fitting perfectly against mine, I realized I never wanted this night to end. But in the back of my mind, a nagging voice reminded me that every high has its crash, and I couldn't help but wonder, when morning came, would this magical night disappear like smoke in the air? The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache and a flood of memories from the night before. Mia's laugh, the warmth of her hand in mine, the way her body moved on the dance floor. It all felt like a dream, too good to be true. Reality came crashing back as my phone buzzed with a message from Harrison. "Walker, my office, 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Groaning, I dragged myself out of bed. The mirror reflected a stranger, hair disheveled, eyes bright despite the hangover. Was that really me? At the office, the atmosphere was tense. Whispers followed me down the hallway. Great, looked like I was the latest water cooler gossip. Harrison's face was thunderous as I entered his office. "Sit down, Walker," he barked. I perched on the edge of the chair, bracing myself for the axe to fall. "I've just gotten off the phone with Johnson and Meyer," he began, his voice ominously calm. "Seems they've decided to give us another chance." I blinked, stunned. "Sir?" "Don't ask me how, but they want you to handle their account personally." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "This is your last shot, Walker. Screw this up, and you're done. Understand?" I nodded, still in shock. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." As I stumbled back to my desk, my phone buzzed. A text from Mia. "Last night was fun. Encore tonight." My heart leapt even as my brain screamed caution. I had a career-defining project to focus on. I couldn't afford distractions. But my fingers were already typing, "Wouldn't miss it." The day crawled by in a haze of meetings and spreadsheets. By the time I made it to O'Malley's, I was exhausted but buzzing with anticipation. Mia's face lit up when she saw me. "Hey, stranger," she grinned, already pouring my usual. "Hey yourself," I smiled back, settling onto my now familiar bar stool. As we fell into easy conversation, I found myself studying her. The way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the graceful movement of her hands as she mixed drinks. How had this woman waltzed into my life and turned everything upside down in just a few days? Earth to Ella. Mia waved her hand in front of my face, smirking. "Where'd you go?" I blushed, caught staring. "Sorry, just thinking." "Penny for your thoughts?" I hesitated, then decided to take the plunge. "I was thinking about how glad I am that snowstorm brought me here that night." Mia's eyes softened. She leaned across the bar, close enough that I could feel her breath on my cheek. "Me too," she whispered. The moment stretched between us, electric with possibility. I found myself leaning in, drawn by some magnetic pull. Suddenly, a loud crash from the kitchen shattered the moment. Mia jumped back, a fleeting look of, was that fear, crossing her face? "I should check on that," she muttered, hurrying away. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what had just almost happened. And why did Mia look so spooked? As I watched her laugh off the incident with her coworkers, her walls back up, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Mia than met the eye. And despite every instinct telling me to be careful, I knew I was already in too deep to turn back now. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of stolen moments with Mia and long hours at the office. I was walking a tightrope, balancing my growing feelings for her with the pressure of the Johnson & Meyer account. Every night I'd find myself at O'Malley's, drawn like a moth to Mia's flame. "You know," Mia teased one night, sliding me my usual whiskey, "I'm starting to think you only come here for the free drinks." I laughed, leaning in closer. "Trust me, the company's much better than the booze." Her eyes sparkled, but I caught a flicker of something else, uncertainty. Maybe even fear. It was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual playful smirk. "Smooth talker, you trying to get me in trouble, Ella?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. "Progress report. Tomorrow morning." Reality came crashing back. I groaned, rubbing my temples. "Speaking of trouble." Mia's brow furrowed. "Work again?" I nodded, downing the rest of my drink. "I should go. Big presentation tomorrow." "Hey," Mia said softly, catching my hand as I stood. "You've got this, okay? You're brilliant." Her touch sent electricity through me. For a moment I forgot about work, about everything except the woman in front of me. "Thanks," I murmured. "That means a lot." As I turned to leave, Mia called out, "Ella, maybe we could grab dinner sometime. You know, away from the bar." My heart soared. I'd love that. The next morning I strode into Harrison's office, confidence buoyed by Mia's words. But as I launched into my presentation, I noticed Harrison's frown deepening. "Walker," he interrupted. "What the hell is this?" I faltered. "Sir?" He jabbed a finger at my report. "These projections, they're all wrong. Did you even check the data?" Ice flooded my veins as I realized my mistake. In my distraction, I'd used last year's numbers instead of the updated ones. I can explain." "Save it," Harrison snapped. "Fix this, now, and Walker, one more screw-up and you're out. Clear?" I nodded, fleeing his office with my cheeks burning. How could I have been so careless? The rest of the day passed in a blur of frantic corrections and self-recrimination. By the time I stumbled into O'Malley's that night, I was a wreck. Mia took one look at me and poured a double. "Rough day?" I laughed bitterly. "You could say that. I royally screwed up at work." Her face softened with sympathy. "Want to talk about it?" And suddenly, everything came pouring out. My fears, my insecurities, the pressure I was under. Mia listened, her hand resting comfortingly on mine. "Ella," she said gently when I finished, "you're being too hard on yourself. Everyone makes mistakes." "Not me," I muttered. "I can't afford to." Mia's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite read. Trust me, I get it. The need to be perfect. But sometimes you have to let yourself fall. There was a weight to her words, a hint of a story untold. I found myself wanting to know more, to understand the shadows behind her smile. Mia, I started. What? But before I could finish, a loud crash from the back room made Mia jump. A man's angry voice carried through the bar, and I saw genuine fear flash across Mia's face. I have to go, she stammered, already backing away. I'm sorry, Ella. As she disappeared into the back, leaving me alone at the bar, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to Mia's story than I knew. And suddenly, my work troubles seemed insignificant compared to the mystery unfolding before me. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and unanswered texts. Mia hadn't shown up for her shifts, and my messages went unread. I couldn't shake the image of her face pale with fear before she disappeared that night. I threw myself into work, desperate for a distraction. The Johnson and Meyer account was finally coming together, but it felt hollow without Mia to share my small victories with. It was a rainy Tuesday when everything changed. I was hunched over my desk, drowning in spreadsheets, when my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Ella, it's Mia. Meet me at Wingfield Park. Now. Please. My heart raced as I read the words. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and rushed out, ignoring the curious stares of my coworkers. The park was deserted, rain pattering softly on the leaves. I spotted Mia by the river, huddled under a large oak tree. As I approached, I could see she'd been crying. Mia, I called softly, what's going on? She turned, relief flooding her face. Ella, you came. I reached for her hand, alarmed by how cold it felt. Of course I came. What happened? Are you okay? Mia took a shaky breath. I'm sorry I disappeared. I had to get away. From him. Him? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. My ex, she whispered. He found me. Again. The story came out in bits and pieces, an abusive relationship she'd fled, a man who wouldn't let go, a past that kept catching up no matter how far she ran. I thought I was safe here, Mia said, her voice breaking. I thought I could start over, and then I met you, and for the first time in years I felt hope. But now. I pulled her close, feeling her body shake with silent sobs. Mia, listen to me. You are safe. I won't let anything happen to you. She looked up at me, her green eyes swimming with tears. You don't understand. He's dangerous, Ella. I can't drag you into this. Too late, I said, surprising myself with the fierceness in my voice. I'm already in this. We'll figure it out together. For a moment we just stood there, rain dripping from the leaves around us. Then, slowly, Mia leaned in. Our lips met, soft and hesitant at first, then with growing urgency. It was like coming home and stepping off a cliff all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Mia rested her forehead against mine. What are we going to do? She whispered. I thought about my job, teetering on the edge, about the careful life I'd built, now crumbling around me. And I realized none of it mattered compared to the woman in my arms. We're going to face this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Together. As we walked out of the park hand in hand, I knew my life would never be the same. The road ahead was uncertain, possibly dangerous. But for the first time I was ready to take the risk, because some things, some people, were worth risking everything for. The next few days were a whirlwind of action. I took a leave of absence from work, much to Harrison's fury, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Mia and I holed up in my apartment, plotting our next move. We need to go to the police, I insisted, pacing the living room. Mia shook her head, fear clouding her eyes. They won't help, he's got connections. I sat beside her, taking her hand. Then we'll find another way. I'm not letting him hurt you again. Just as we were brainstorming options, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. Mia froze, her face draining of color. He's found me, she whispered. I squeezed her hand. Stay here. Heart pounding, I approached the door. Taking a deep breath, I swung it open. But it wasn't Mia's ex, it was Harrison. "Walker," he growled, pushing past me into the apartment. "What the hell do you think you're doing? The Johnson and Meyer presentation is tomorrow, and you're—" He stopped short, spotting Mia on the couch. His eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" Before I could answer, another figure appeared in the doorway. A man, tall and menacing, his eyes locked on Mia. "There you are, sweetheart," he sneered. Everything happened in a blur. Mia's ex lunged forward. Harrison, to my surprise, moved to block him. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the door. "Get out," I snarled, positioning myself between Mia and her tormentor. The man laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "You don't know what you're getting into, lady." "Actually," Harrison's voice cut in, "I think you're the one who doesn't know what he's getting into." We all turned to stare at him. Harrison pulled out his phone, showing us a video of the entire confrontation. "I've been recording since I walked in," he said calmly. "Assault, breaking and entering, violating a restraining order. That's quite a list of charges." Mia's ex paled, backing towards the door. "You can't prove anything." "Want to bet?" Harrison raised an eyebrow. "I'm sure the police would be very interested in this footage, not to mention the board members of your company. Imagine the scandal." For a moment nobody moved. Then, with a final glare at Mia, her ex turned and fled. As the door slammed behind him, I turned to Harrison in disbelief. "Why? How?" He shrugged, a hint of a smile on his normally stern face. "Let's just say I recognize a toxic ex when I see one. Been there myself." Mia stood, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Harrison nodded, then turned to me. "Walker, take the rest of the week off, and when you come back, we'll talk about that promotion." As he left, I turned to Mia, pulling her into a tight embrace. "It's over," I murmured into her hair. "You're safe now." She looked up at me, her green eyes shining. "We're safe," she corrected, before pulling me into a deep, passionate kiss. Later that night, as we lay tangled together in bed, Mia traced patterns on my skin. "So," she said softly, "what happens now?" I smiled, kissing her forehead. "Now, we start our own story, together." As I drifted off to sleep, Mia safe in my arms, I marveled at how much my life had changed in just a few short weeks. I'd taken risks I never thought I would, faced fears I didn't know I had, and found a love I never expected. And for the first time in my life, I was excited for the unknown future ahead. Because whatever came next, I knew Mia and I would face it together. Sometimes, the biggest risk is not taking one at all. And as I held the woman I loved, I knew that this risk, this love, was the best decision I'd ever made.